Now, I saw this movie a couple of days ago and I wasn't quite sure if I was going to do a full review on it. I'm not sure if I understand it just yet. I liked it, but I'm not sure if I understand it. Never mind the fact that we haven't quite recovered from his last movie, Poor Things, but this is another one from Yorgos Lanthimos, Kinds of Kindness, stars Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Maggie Qualley, Willem Dafoe, Joe Alwyn, Hong Chow, Mamadou Ache. All right, so Kinds of Kindness is being described as a triptych fable. A triptych is a piece of art. It's 3 panels. So think of this artwork back here and divide it into 3 panels. So an artwork that's 3 distinct panels that are loosely connected. That's basically what this movie is. It's broken into 3 fables that are vastly different from one another. We have the same cast in each story, but they play different characters. But there is a theme that kind of loosely connects them. And then one character in particular that we see in every single story, he just has a different role. That's RMF. So the 3 stories are The Death of RMF, RMF is Flying, and RMF Eats a Sandwich. Our first story, The Death of RMF, is about a man named Robert. Robert works for Raymond, and Raymond, being his boss, orchestrates his entire life. Literally has a schedule for him, something he's supposed to do every single day: when to eat, what to eat, when to have sex with his wife. And even if he goes to the bar, what kind of drink he should get, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic. And even goes so far as to tell him that he has to get into a car accident at this specific intersection and hit this specific car. Well, apparently part of the instructions was to get hospitalized. So the first time he does it, he doesn't hit him hard enough to get hospitalized. So he goes back to his boss to tell him what happened. And apparently he didn't complete the job that was asked. So he's like, no worries. We're going to get it done in 2 days. And he's like, okay. He says, but when you do it again in 2 days, you need to drive faster. Because apparently the goal is to kill RMF. Well, Robert is not so sure, and he's a little torn because he's done everything Raymond has asked him to do. Everything. But he can't do this. But I won't do that. He declines the assignment, and then things start to unravel because now Robert is living a life that's not under Raymond's influence, and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to function, and he's desperate to get back into his good graces, desperate to get under his tutelage, that he goes to extremes. He ends up finding out who the new Robert is under Raymond, a girl named Rita, played by Emma Stone, and seeks her out, tries to get into her life, date her a little bit, if you will, and finds a way to get the job done. I don't want to spoil it too much. All right, so the second story is RMF is Flying, and this is where it gets weird. So RMF in this story is a helicopter pilot who saves a woman named Liz. Now we're talking about a dude named Daniel, and Daniel's wife, Liz, is missing at sea. Daniel is a police officer. He works with his best friend, and it's an interesting situation there. I'm not going to spoil it too much because, again, it's weird. So he's missing his wife. He doesn't know where she is. Apparently she's some kind of scientist, does a lot of research. Well, she gets found and she's brought by helicopter to the hospital. There's also another person who did survive and one person who's still missing. And Daniel, happy to have his wife home, happy to have their little friend group back together, he starts to get really suspicious because things are a little off. Liz comes home and she's eating chocolate. She doesn't like chocolate. She comes home and she wants a cigarette, but she doesn't smoke. She comes home and tries to put her shoes on, but none of her shoes fit. So Daniel starts to get really suspicious that his wife is an imposter. And somehow this leads to the weirdest case of cannibalism I've ever seen. It's, again, we're in this story where we have Liz, who is trying to please her husband Daniel and be the wife that he wants, going to very crazy extremes, such as cutting off her finger and feeding it to him, and even cutting off her liver, and then it gets weird. I'm sorry, cutting out her liver. She cut out her liver. It doesn't matter. It was weird. Our last and final story is RMF Eats a Sandwich. And now we're following Emily, played by Emma Stone, and Andrew, played by Jesse Plemons. And they're in a cult. And it looks like they're trying to find a very specific someone, almost the perfect someone who knows how to raise people from the dead or heal people. We don't really know why. We never get a why. It's honestly not important. That's the least of our questions. Well, Emily has had a dream about twins and how she's stuck at the bottom of a pool. Her hair is caught, and one of the twins comes and saves her. And she's like, that's her. She's the one. So Andrew's not convinced. He's like, it's just a dream. It's not real. And the cult is a little, everything's weird. Everything's weird. So we get to see a naked Willem Dafoe. I will give you that. If that was on your bucket list of things to see, a naked Willem Dafoe, there you go. I'm so sorry. Now, even though Emily has dedicated her life to this cult, she still has affections or thoughts or longings for her family. She has a husband and a daughter whom they just call the little one. And she ends up going to their house whenever they're away and just, sitting in the house, leaving gifts for her daughter, spraying this crazy water all over her bed, I guess as a sign of protection or something. It turns out it's actually like, I guess it's ocean water. Maybe it's supposed to be the ocean. I'm pretty sure this was shot near Lake Pontchartrain, which I would never in my life drink water from there. But yeah, Lake Pontchartrain, and then tears and makes the water special. And so she sprinkles this water, and that's the water that they drink. And I'm losing my train of thought. But so she ends up running into her husband and her daughter. And her husband's desperately trying to say, come over for dinner, come sit with us, come hang out, come stay a while. And she's just like, no, no, no. And she finds a moment to slip away from Andrew because they're on this assignment together to find this mystery person who can heal people, and ends up going and spending time with her husband, who does nasty things to her and defiles her. And because she's been defiled, she's, contaminated, she's unclean. So she goes back to the cult, who tries to sweat the contamination out of her. Doesn't work, and they end up kicking her out, leaving her with a few $100s to live off of. Now, rewind a little bit back to when Andrew and Emily were working together. They ran into this young woman named Rebecca who said, my twin sister is the one you're looking for. So now that Emily is kicked out, she seeks out, Rebecca and asks her more about her sister. And she said, well, it has to be specific. It has to be a twin, and one of the twins is dead. And apparently there was this freak accident in which she bumped her head while she was drunk. Her sister pulled her out and she was okay. And she's trying to explain to her, I understand you're looking for a twin who has a dead twin, but you're not understanding me. Like, I'm supposed to be dead, like trying to hint to her, like, I'm alive because of my sister. So she ends up finding the sister, and that's where it gets messy. It's almost like there's this sort of prophecy. So the twin that they're looking for, her name is Ruth. She finds a dog, a stray dog, cuts the dog. So for those of you who are like animal lovers, I don't like seeing animals get hurt. It's very brief. So she takes the dog to the vet to get the dog all, stitched up or whatever. And it turns out that the dog just healed. All that's left from this cut, which should have been maybe stitches, is just a little red scar, a little red mark. She's like, holy crap, she's the one. And goes over to talk to twin sister Rebecca, who decides she's going to go, do her part and fulfill this prophecy, because apparently they need a twin to be no longer living. And that happened. And then it gets more weird. And she looks like she, mission accomplishes, but she celebrates a little too early. I explained none of that well. So there are some interesting things about the way this is set up. So you have, your main cast playing different characters throughout the 3 different films, but you have your two mains, your 2 leads, Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone. And it's interesting to see how their positions in these different stories go from being very prominent in the story to being less of a big role. So we had our first story, which was all about Robert. And then we have our last story, which was all about Emily. So we had Robert playing this big, Jesse Plemons playing this bigger role in the first story, Emma Stone playing a minor role. And then we get to the middle where it's almost like this equal little thing. And it's like they switch places. We get to that last story where it's all about Emma Stone's character. And then Jesse Plemons' character plays very minor. It's this interesting little X where they kind of meet in the middle. And it's just equal exchange of power. Very interesting the way that was told. And it's like this cross where they kind of meet in the middle. And I think that's where the triptych comes in. But then also you have this character, RMF, who is a consistent character throughout. It's the same guy. His role is just different. In the first one, he's the car accident victim. In the second one, he's the pilot. And in the third one, I think we're all wondering, like, how does RMF play into this? We see him at the very end eating a sandwich. Now, this is one of those movies where I liked it. I'm just not sure if you will. It's one of those, you're either going to like it or you're not. You're either going to get it or you're not. You're either going to be engaged in it or you're going to be very, very lost. Like, there is no real in between here. There is no, I kind of like, no, you're either going to really like it or you're just not. That's about it. And I think the reason for that is it's an exploration into a genre that you don't see on screen very often. This is called absurdist. Absurdist is all about violating the natural order of things and exploring the everyday normal experiences of human beings as they search for their purpose in life. And that's kind of what we're doing here, because we have Robert, who is trying to figure out the purpose in his life. And for so long, it has been to serve Raymond. And now that Raymond's not in the picture, he's trying to figure out what he's supposed to do. You have Daniel and Liz, and Daniel trying to figure out his purpose with this wife who feels like is not his wife, but also Liz trying to figure out who she is and how she fits into this life. And, you know, dealing with this big trauma of being lost at sea, and now a husband who is just not cooperating. And then you have Emily, who is trying to figure out who she is. Is she a dedicated member of this cult, or is she just meant to be a wife and a mother? Where does she fit? But also talking about the disruption of the natural order of things. That's very heavy in this movie, and that things will just be going very normal. And all of a sudden we take this quick little, not even a pivot. It's like we take a sharp left turn, and it just gets weird. And now we're in a space that just didn't quite connect to the last one. You know, sorry, spoiler alert, but we have in that middle story, RMF is flying, where Daniel is just hell-bent on proving that Liz is not his wife. So he's asking her to do these absurd things. At first he's like, you know, I want you to cut off your finger and serve it to me with a plate of cauliflower. And she's like, what? But then she does it. And then, you know, he's like, well, your finger was disgusting. I ended up feeding it to the cat. Like, how rude. How rude. But anyways, he's like, you know, I just want something a little more meatier. You know, your liver, I think, would be good. And then she does it. And there's a liver on the floor. And then he comes out and he sees her. And I'm like, sir, there's a liver on the floor. And then there's a knock at the door. The doorbell rings. Something to alert you that there's somebody at the door. And he opens the door. And it's Liz. But Liz is sitting in a chair bleeding with her liver on the floor. But now Liz is at the door. And then it ends. And I don't understand. I don't understand. This is the kind of movie that requires a group discussion immediately after. But this is also in, you know, typical Yorgos Lanthimos fashion, his style, where he is very big on like tight shots and then wide shots, and also his actors having, you know, almost like a rigidness about them, and then giving very stiff and, you know, stilted dialogue. And in a lot of these stories, it's like they're saying exactly what they're thinking. And he's also not afraid to really deep dive into the more extreme aspects of human sexuality. I mean, you saw Poor Things, right? And honestly, that's all I got for Kinds of Kindness. I really don't have much more to say, and that's because I'm still confused. But if you happen to see it, I believe it goes wide this weekend. Let me know what you thought. I really want to know what you thought. Can we have that group discussion in the comments section, because I have so many questions and maybe you can answer them for me. But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you next time.